So, welcome to our August fireside chat. You are We're learning today about wildfire forests and forest animals. We have some wonderful guests here today who are very knowledgeable about wildfires and are going to teach us a lot. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end. I have my colleagues here. We have Mary Eacency from In Defense of Animals, who will be taking your questions and answering your questions in the chat.
Hi, everybody.
We have my colleague in Defense of Animals also, Bob Price, who will also be helping out with us for everything technical.
Hello.
And then we have Rick Halsey with the California Chaparral Institute. And Jack Gescheit from the Tree Spirit Project and In Defense of Animals, who will be giving us a presentation. And then we'll be having Rick talk with us as well, and then we'll be answering your questions at the end. So please do stay tuned throughout the whole thing, and we will be answering your questions at the end. You can drop your questions in the chat as we're talking, and my colleague Mary will get back to you. So without further ado, I'm going to hand us over to Jack to start your presentation, Jack.
Thank you, Fleur, Mary, Bob, Rick, Halsey. Very excited to do this. It's a super important topic. In fact, if you can see behind me, I'm going to cover myself for a moment. This is a flyer that In Defense of Animals produced. I was working with them. They've been wonderful partners, and it kind of says it in a nutshell. We are opposed to deforestation at this one specific place, happens to be Tamales Bay State Park, where they would treat the forest, in other words, with herbicides, chainsaws, and masticators, whatever those are. And we're going to get into all that. So in addition to, as Fleur said, fire or wildfire and forests and animals who live there, the other big topic here, lots of different names for it, I would call many of them euphemisms, is vegetation management. We're going to manage the vegetation. So what does that mean exactly? I'm going to go to a slide deck in a moment here and talk for, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes. There's a 4-minute video embedded in there to show you folks what a masticator is, aka mastication machine, often sometimes called very cleverly a forest mulcher, because, you know, mulching's good. Let's do that. And then I'm going to bring Rick on. I'm very excited. He's one of a few people who are super knowledgeable and been involved in this issue for more than the decade I have, and has taught me a lot. He's the director of the California Chaparral Institute down in San Diego County. I'm up in Marin County, California. But really what we're talking about here, these topics apply to all of California and really all of the western forests, which are definitely feeling the effects of a climate crisis, global warming, global heating, climate emergency, all these names for it. And one of the prescriptions now is forest management, thinning the forest. So let me go to the slide deck and I'm going to show you a lot more words and pictures, and then we'll come back in about 20 minutes and I want Rick to comment, as I'm going to ask Rick to comment during the show as well. And then we'll interface with you guys directly and deal with any questions you have. Let me know if you can see my screen now. I think you can.
Yes.
Okay, so this is our talk today, sponsored by the wonderful group In Defense of Animals, who particularly comes in from the animals' point of view, of course. Will vegetation management save our forests or destroy them? So Jack, Rick, and Fleur are here kind of sharing the screen. And these are terms you've probably heard, most of them at least: forest thinning, fuels reduction, forest treatments, overgrown forest, a forest that is overgrown, which I'll warn you right now, there's no such thing. Improving forest health, you'll hear. Vegetation management, as I said, and then mastication, masticators, mulching. And then the other one you'll often hear in the news these days, and for a decade at least, is catastrophic fire. Catastrophic wildfire, a fire that destroys the forest. And Fleur has taught me, careful, don't repeat the lies. And I'm now going to ignore that wonderful sage advice from a seasoned activist, Fleur, and repeat all the lies. These are all false. None of these are true, at least to varying degrees. One of the things you'll hear, I wish I could see all of you right now in front of me in a room and have you raise your hand. Anybody heard the term, forests today are overgrown? And this is blamed on decades of our past failed wildfire suppression policy of extinguishing all forest fires. So indeed we did extinguish them, but it's false that forests are ever overgrown. And this is a nutshell overview of all these issues we're going to get into. We also supposedly have stopped Native Americans, there's missing an S there, I just saw my own typo, from tending the forests because Native Americans tended the forest for thousands of years. Well, that's not entirely false, but it is definitely not entirely true, and the implications from it are misleading. And as a result, the conclusion, there are more fires today, and they're catastrophic fires. And that's really tricky, but mostly false. We'll get into that. So again, I'm repeating lies, folks. Do not remember these as truths, okay, Fleur? Forests need human tending. Today's forest management is tending the forest. Forests do not need tending from humans. They seem to do okay for millions of years, folks. We need forests. Forests don't need us. We'll get into that, I hope. And then how do we tend? With industrial chainsaws, masticators, herbicides, and controlled burns, which I call artificial burns, have the same beneficial effect, it is claimed, falsely, as Native American practices. And this saves forests. That's pretty much all nonsense. Again, there's a kernel of truth in all these things, which is why they're sticky. And then that vegetation management and thinning is the way to protect ourselves from wildfires. That is almost completely false again. So here's what's omitted by these narratives you'll hear from county agencies, state agencies, federal agencies like the U.S. Forest Service, and of course repeated by the media. Repetition is how you get stuff in your head, right? Not mentioned is the effect on wild animals driven off. There's a massive impact of habitat destruction, high decibel chainsaws, masticators, wood chippers on all forest animals, which I would point out snarkily, duh, you think? That stuff is maybe cursorily mentioned, but not focused on as a massive impact. And of course, you can just ignore animals and say, yeah, but my house, Jack, I need to protect my house. And that's fine. Let's do that. So there is spreading now, understandably, a fear of wildfire and then fire suppression. It's the same old fear. And the solution is fear of fire, solve it by suppressing fires, but that's just repackaged today as vegetation management and fuels reduction. I don't know, we're tending the forest. Well, that's one word for it, but I would say no, you're suppressing wildfires. You're still spreading the same old industrial fear, civilized fear of a wildfire. I mean, it's there in the name. The fire has gone wild. We have to tame it, suppress it, reduce the fuels, and manage the vegetation to stop that. That's omitted. We're going to get into that as well, repeatedly here. So the way out is you treat houses to be ignition resistant. You not treating forests, which is thinning, herbicides, artificial burns. That's deforestation. You treat the house, not the forest. And then I want to get into mastication, a weird word. In my experience, I didn't know what it was until a few years ago when I ran into Rick doing forest stuff, and he taught me what a masticator is, and now I'm going to show you all what that is too. Know what that is, also called a mulcher to confuse people. So let's get right into it. That is a masticating machine. There are many different types. Doesn't look too light on the land to me. Another masticator, not too light on the land, gently tending the forest to my way of thinking. This is one taken down in San Diego County that I think, Rick, did you send me this picture? Chaparral habitat mastication? Rick, are you there? Are you frozen? Can anybody hear me at all?
I can hear you, Jack,
Yes,
but
we
Rick
can
looks
hear
frozen.
you.
Wow, that was spooky. At the moment I was frozen there. And I was like, am I just talking to myself? It's going really well for me, but I kind of want you folks to hear it. So I don't know the name of that machine, Rick, do you?
Rick
looks
just
like he-
dropped.
It looks like he had some technical issues.
Okay,
so
he'll be
he's
back.
gone.
Anyway,
Yeah.
look at that monstrosity. Now that's being me emotional and unscientific, but you got to be kidding me. And this is reducing the fire danger in a wild habitat of chaparral. I think this is mostly coyote brush. Rick would know. I think it's his picture. But he'll be back and we're moving on.
I think
So
you need to reshare your slides again, Jack.
No, we can see them.
I can
Oh,
see.
I can. All right.
Okay, are we still doing okay?
Yes.
So this is the same scene, just pulling back. An entire hillside is being leveled, and this is called vegetation management, folks. This is also mastication, and now I want to show you that machine in action from a Cal Parks video that I have doctored and messed with, like George Carlin would. This young man, I have nothing against him, environmental scientist with California State Parks. He did a video. I'm showing about 4 minutes of it with some commentary that I've added.
So behind me we have a mechanical masticator, also known as a forestry mulcher, or a tracked skid steer with a mulch.
I paused it. I just want to make sure you're hearing this, folks. This is coming across.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, thank you. And also, just so you know, folks, this is not a Cal Parks presentation. It is a Cal Parks video, which is legal to show. It's produced by your taxpayer dollars in California, and I am altering it. So that's a disclaimer as well that I've messed with this video. I'm not trying to pretend I'm Cal Parks. I am not. I'm not opposed to everything they do, but I am opposed to what you're about to see. Continuing.
Head. A masticator is one tool that allows us to mimic the effects of fire, but in a safer and more controlled manner. It rearranges the fuels, spreading them out over the landscape and reducing our flame lengths when we do reintroduce broadcast burning during a prescribed fire. It essentially has a rolling drum with teeth on it that can take in larger diameter woody species like brush and small trees up to about like a Folgers coffee can size, and it will chip the material in place, spreading the mulch or the slash out across the landscape. Essentially, this thing doesn't get rid of the fuels, it doesn't get rid of the plants and the material, but it does rearrange them from a more vertical position into a more spread out horizontal position on the landscape, which reduces our flame lengths when we do reintroduce fire during a broadcast prescribed burn. Essentially, this thing doesn't get rid of the fuels, it doesn't get rid of the plants and the material, but it does rearrange them from a more vertical position into a more spread out horizontal position on the landscape.
I am pausing it once again. I just realized I want you to hear my voice when I speak about this, folks, because if you take away nothing from this presentation today but the 5 minutes of this video, what you're being shown is, in my humble opinion, as an activist who cares so much about forests and animals I can't put it into words, this is propaganda. What you will hear is these are tending the forest, and even this young man has said, it's rearranging the fuels. We don't remove them. A forest is fuel. They are deforesting an area and turning down the sound of the machine and putting on happy music. This is propaganda. And I know propaganda because I create my own, but I like to think mine is more truthful. So I will now continue. Thank you for listening.
If we were to reintroduce fire to the landscape right now without first pre-treating it with mastication or hang-through thinning, we would run the risk of initiating a high-intensity, high-severity fire that would top kill our hardwood trees that we're trying to plant. Some of the limitations of mechanical masticator are it does have a lot of ground pressure. It does put a lot of pressure on the ground, so when our soils are more saturated after rain, it can disturb the soil, and so we are always careful about where we allow these things to work. And when I first saw this piece of equipment, it really didn't sit well with me. I said, well, we can do this all by hand. We can reintroduce fire safely if we just use the right prescriptions and time it right. But the more I've worked with these pieces of equipment, the more I see them as actually a really, really light hand on the landscape. They can maneuver through smaller diameter trees. They can avoid certain habitats. They can avoid wood rats' nests. When we do nesting bird buffers, they can go around them cleanly. They're a lot quieter than you might expect. And when they're done, the areas look more parkland. They look like they would after you see a fire move through an area. It really has this extraordinary ability to pick and choose areas that you future and mimic that effect, but in real.
Sorry, moving on to the next slide. So I did put my Tree Spirit Project stamp on that because I'm taking responsibility in case Cal Parks comes after someone saying, yeah, that's terrible. I would love to go to court and argue that what they're doing is misleading and what I was showing was truthful and there's no exaggeration or lies coming out of my mouth. But it's really key that you understand that, folks. And I could kind of stop there and do questions, but I'm going to carry on here with the rest of these slides and we'll get back to all of you. So this is vegetation management, a before and after, a little series I've done here. Forest on the left, doesn't matter what species of tree, and on the right is fuels reduction. But really it's just putting it on the ground, so now you have a grass fire. Same danger, just instead of a canopy fire, you have a ground fire, and each has advantages and disadvantages as far as what they pose to houses. Another example of thinning, on the right side actually, by the center of the frame, you'll see actually a coyote standing there. After thinning, it's basically deforestation and where the animals go. And, you know, again, the argument is, well, sorry about the animals, Jack, we love them, but we need to make ourselves safe. This isn't safer. Again, for reasons we're going to keep repeating. Another example on the left, forest, on the right, vegetation management, thinning fire fuels. This is how we protect houses. And this is actually, I would say, overkill. You don't need to clear everything around your house, but even if you did this, this would be far less destructive to clear the area around your houses of dry vegetation, not living trees, which are actually hard to ignite. And we're going to talk more about that. This is defensible space, a simple little diagram of the whole world of defensible space treatments. And then home hardening means that if a shower of embers were to blow over this house, it wouldn't ignite the house. So you don't treat forests to death, you treat the houses instead. You make them ignition resistant. And the irony is these same agencies that are promoting vegetation management, like Marin Wildfire on the right side of the screen there, and Fire Safe Marin in Marin County, both have guides about doing the right thing, which is retrofitting your house so that you can, I mean, I don't need to get into the detail here. This is a separate 20-minute presentation, but if you do these treatments, your house will not be ignited by a fire that's over even 50 feet away, certainly not 100 feet away. You don't need to touch the forest beyond. Second point, if you come away with anything about this, is leave the forest alone if it's beyond 100 feet of your house. And that depends on wind and weather and slope and all sorts of factors, but that is a very safe, very general rule. Leave the forest alone beyond 100 feet from your house. And then just quickly, you can install metal guards. On the right side are the wind flow up into what are called the soffits underneath the eaves where heat can be trapped. There are ways to exclude that heat. So for relatively small amounts of money compared to what the state is spending to cut down forests, you can make houses safe. On the left side, again, it's really overkill. Embers can land on what you're seeing in that picture and it won't ignite the house. There's nothing to burn. That's all you need to do. And on the right side is a longer list, blah, blah, blah. I'm just trying to get across the general point. And now here, aerial view of a destroyed, burned to the ground community, and look at the trees, folks, around there. This is in the 2018 Camp Fire, a big fire that made all the news in Paradise, California. Well, trees are supposed to ignite the houses, and you have to cut the trees back, and you have to create shaded fuel breaks and blah, blah, blah. Nonsense. These houses could have been protected because it was embers that ignited the houses and didn't ignite the forest. You get that? It's a difficult concept if you're seeing it for the first time, but I'll show you another example. Same idea. Houses burned down to the foundations. How is it the trees survived? Because you're taught now to fear trees, folks. You are taught to fear trees. They are dangerous. They are fuel loads. We must cut them down by the millions. Literally cut them down by the millions. Manage them. Thin them. remove them. Doesn't that sound nice? Look at this picture. There are more like this is why I wanted to show you photographs so you get it in your head. Trees are not the enemy. They never have been. They never will be. They're actually the solution. Another example, this one's in San Diego. Those are eucalyptus trees, by the way, which are also demonized as dangerous gasoline fire, fuel fire trees. Careful, kill them all. Nonsense. Protect the house and this wouldn't happen. The trees didn't ignite the house. I'm repeating myself, just as the propaganda does to get you to fear trees and convince you to cut down forests. Nonsense. What are shaded fuel breaks? And do they stop wildfires? Same idea, folks. There's a big grass fire from 2016. If a wind picks up and hits that, that is going to jump across the road and spread. Doesn't matter that those firefighters are risking their lives, God bless them, standing there. Same with this. There's a big shaded fuel break called a road. What is that, 40, 50 feet of pavement? Irrelevant. If the wind blows, not just flames, but embers, firebrands, as they're called in the wildfire fighting business, can blow across a shaded fuel break of 100 feet or 100 yards or a half a mile. Shaded fuel breaks do nothing in a wind-driven fire, and wind-driven fires are the thing we need to protect ourselves against. There is a real fire danger, but cutting down trees and forests and vegetation and plants and shrubs and wildland habitat is not the solution. It arguably can make things worse by heating the climate more. So deforesters, as I like to call foresters these days, sadly, they're forgetting someones. And I think this group of all people knows who I mean. Hundreds of thousands of someones. And I'm actually tearing up talking to fellow animal lovers who get it. But even you folks, understandably, have been propagandized to think that you need to kill the habitat where these folks live. And what makes our human beings, make us thrive by destroying forests where these animals live in order to be safe. It's not true. So the conclusions, what to do and what not to do. Do treat houses and property within 100 feet. Do not treat forests. Again, another takeaway. That's my third request for a takeaway. Remember that. Treat houses, not forests. That's how you protect yourself. And you can help this effort by In Defense of Animals, God bless them, by signing a new alert we have, which is specific to Marin, but it's a project in Marin where we have media, and In Defense of Animals is working on this issue to educate more people like you folks. But these are, you've heard the activists say, think locally, as I'm doing as an activist who lives in this county, but this work applies globally. It certainly applies statewide and in any area affected by drought and heat and the climate crisis, which is going to be a lot more areas. Attacking the forest will only make things worse because climate crisis is brought on in large part deforestation. And there's more info about one specific project, which gets into a lot of the details that I'm repeating too quickly at that other URL, idausa.org/Tomales Bay. I think that's the last slide. Yeah. So let me stop the screen share. Hopefully come back to you. And I just wanted right away, Rick, do you have anything you'd like to add at this point? And I want to bring you into the conversation because you have so much to teach people, and you're your own fiery, perfect word, fiery speaker, as is Flair. God bless you guys. I'm actually emotional realizing this is how we're going to save humanity, the forests, the planet, and the animals we love. It's all the same fight, not cutting down, not deforesting in the name of fire management and fire suppression is what it is. I'm off the soapbox, Rick, take it.
Well, Jack, I have to, I've been doing this for more than 20 years, and I've got to say you synthesized the main points just better than I think I've seen before. So thank you so much. It's a difficult problem because we all hear you once, right now. And I've had this experience myself where I go off and I'll give a presentation. And I gave one in particular at UCSB a number of years ago, and I landed all the jokes. I had all the interactive activities. It worked so well. I mean, at least I thought it did. And on the way back to the parking lot, I had a young lady talk to me on the way back, and she was asking me, so I understand all that you've taught, but how do we get more fire in the chaparral? Because doesn't it need fire? And I had just spent the previous hour and a half explaining that was not the case. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because we're pattern-seeking animals. And so no matter what you say to people, you may think what you're saying is important and people are listening, but they actually aren't. They're filtering everything you say through a filter that they've created in their own lives based on experiences and education. And so you may think you're communicating, but you're not, because you're having to get through a bunch of preconceived notions. And so you may say the right thing and speak the truth, but it's hard for people to connect that with their own lives. And so you're going to hear the message continuously from PhDs, from UC Berkeley and Davis scientists, from the Forest Service, from municipalities even, that we have a fire suppression problem, and that has created an overgrowth of vegetation which must be mitigated.
That's
And
the lie.
that's how we solve the
That's the-
wildfire problem.
That's the lie.
That's the lie. And that's what Jack so clearly articulated. And you're going to hear that over and over in the next 50 years until the paradigm changes. And what we are presenting today is going to slowly fade away because you're going to keep hearing this over and over. That's the magic of propaganda. So you have to think about yourself as a thinking, clearly logical person. And you have to question everything. You have to be curious. You have to ditch these paradigms. You even have yourself, and don't get trapped by your own opinions, and just be skeptical and curious and ask questions, especially when you hear things that confirm what you already think. So go ahead, Jack.
No, thank you. I prefer the contrapuntal presentation here, and you're welcome to jump in too, Fleur. We are speaking, I'm aware, to animal lovers, and I would say that you got to trust your own instincts as well. In other words, like, gosh, I mean, this is my guess is how this lands with a lot of people if they're hearing all this information for the first time. Like, I'm so glad to hear this. I am actually more open to it than the average person, because it upsets me so much to think that if we're running all these machines, we're going to scare the animals off. But with the propaganda war going on right now, fear is the powerful, powerful weapon. Yes, I love animals. Yes, of course, I don't want to kill them. And these folks, they're not going to actually shoot the animals. That's not what they're doing. They're just going to run these machines. And like, ooh, and then when they see what it actually looks like, which is it looks and is a lot worse than it's described, we're just managing vegetation and removing trees. And we'll do animal surveys so that the animals will be, we make sure we won't hit a salamander.
Right. So,
but hang on. But the point is, trust your instincts. Like, this doesn't seem right. Listen to that voice. And then, you know, there is science behind what Rick and I are saying. And I do want to give, by the way, just so you know who Rick is, this guy has got chops. He's the director of his California Chaparral Institute, which is in San Diego County. He has degrees, because degrees are important. I wish I had some, in environmental studies, anthropology, and of course, education. So he's taught biology, physics, environmental science for over 30 years in public and private schools. And get this, he's also trained as a wildland firefighter. He did a short stint as a U.S. Forest Service firefighter, which is so relevant to this. He knows about it. And if you want to talk about that, Rick, do so, please. But that's who this guy is. And he has taught me a lot. And he's been at this, I think he's got a couple of years on me. He's been at this longer than I have.
Okay. So jumping on that issue about fire. So the second thing you're going to hear, and this is actually intuitive, and this is what your instincts are telling you. So this is where I want to maybe diverge from you a little bit, Jack, is that people are afraid of fire for good reason. And they see pictures of it, and what they see are walls of flame. Fire does not behave the way you think of it in a fireplace or by walls of flame that you see in the media. Here's what happens. When a fire ignites, it goes through different kinds of vegetation. A wildland fire goes through forests, shrubs, and grass. So ask yourself, my gosh, what's the most dangerous type of fire? A forest fire, a shrub fire, or a grass fire? And you're probably going to say a forest fire because there's so much there to burn. Here's what happens in a forest fire. Only the smallest twigs actually ignite and the fire continues on. But what it does when it moves on, it throws ahead of itself, especially if it's wind driven, which all the most devastating wildfires are, embers a mile or two ahead of the fire front. So people have this notion there's a wall of flame hitting houses, which is what powers all of the regulations out there. You'll notice remove vegetation, do all of these things. They're finally getting the clue that fire is not the thing that ignites homes, as Jack said. It's the embers that travel miles ahead before the fire even gets to your house. And so it's not the trees and the shrubs that ignite the house, it's the other way around. And we can't get this through our head. And I'll tell you why I know this. If you look at those diagrams from these agencies, there's one thing they're missing, and that is exterior sprinklers. It's something the Canadians, the Australians have figured out long ago. They do this. We can't get it through our heads because we're stuck in a paradigm of sprinklers are for the inside, because after all, these models came from New York and Boston and urban settings. We put sprinklers inside because that's where the fire is going to be, from the stove, from the ignited heater. That's not the problem we face in wildfires. Fire comes from the outside. So you make the environment non-flammable. And one of the best ways to do it is exterior sprinklers. And all that happens is wet homes don't ignite. And you'll hear all sorts of excuses about how they're not going to work. We didn't get to the moon because people in the room were trying to figure out how it wouldn't work. How can it work? That community that Jack showed that was burned out, it was a trailer park in Paradise. If they had had 10 2,000-gallon water tanks surrounding the community, and he had Aunt Marge in the corner trailer who had been trained what to do, when the fire alert hits, and this is long before the fire gets there, she hits that button and all the automatic sprinklers around the trailer park area go off and nothing will ignite if it's wet. That's the secret. And that's why those trees didn't ignite in that picture, Jack, because they're hydrated. And homes are the most flammable thing in the environment. So the problem is we still think we live in New York. We're afraid of flames and fires from stoves, when in fact we're dealing with a completely different situation. And so that's the thing we have to think of. It's counterintuitive, but we have to think about where the fire is coming from, what's causing the homes to burn. Those three pictures you showed, Jack, couldn't have demonstrated better. Yet, what are we doing? Governor of California, for example, allocated about $1 billion a couple of years ago for fire risk reduction. Barely 5% of that money was allocated toward making homes and communities fire safe. 95% of it was allocated toward logging trees and forests miles away from any threatened community.
So why is that, Rick? What's the motivation for agencies to do the wrong thing as opposed to the science? I mean, it's kind of a question that comes up for me without being deeply cynical. There's a reason for it.
Because that's where the money is, you see. That's where the logging industry is. And I'll give you an example. 1930s, there was a big fire in Berkeley, California that took out hundreds of homes and killed people. This is before the one in the 1980s. So the city council passed an ordinance to outlaw shake shingles because they were responsible for igniting the homes. I mean, that's why the things ignited so quickly. That ordinance lasted 6 months. And why was that? Because the shake shingle industry lobbied to have it repealed. Okay, so nowadays, shake shingles are not allowed. And if they are, they're highly treated or they're made of something different other than wood. Why is that? Well, intuitively you think, well, because they're flammable and that's why we outlaw them. No, the reason they're not allowed anymore is there's no shake shingle industry anymore. So that's the issue you've got to confront, is that a lot of the things you hear are not powered by reality and logic. They're powered by vested interest. And it's not that people are getting rich off of this. I mean, fire agencies aren't making money on these things, but all the grants and all the money available to do anything are all focused on these quote unquote fuel treatments, not on the things that really matter. Because unfortunately, there's no big lobby to increase the home hardening industry, because there's no such thing. They're all small mom and pop operations.
So for me as an activist, forest activist, environmental activist, animal rights activist, working with in defense of animals, it's our job, as I see it, to spread this information, to educate the public, alert the media. Public can press on the media. We all make a big stink and get these ideas out there. And we actually can then, we the people will lead the leaders and get these policies to change. But it's grassroots stuff from people listening to this podcast right now who can hear this. And if you feel love for forests and for forest animals, and I know you do, please share this information, share this webinar afterwards, share the information on In Defense of Animals website, my own Tree Spirit website, the Chaparral Institute. We just have to get this word out, and more activists alerting more community members and the media to share these ideas to counter the narrative. I do have a belief, I mentioned this to you today, Rick, one of my favorite quotes and inspires me as an activist, always on the minority side of something, right? By St. Augustine. The truth, wow. The truth is like a lion.
There you go.
There's no need to defend it. Let it loose and it will defend itself. So who the hell are we? There's some guy named Jack and some guy named Rick who's got some credentials. Don't take our word for it. I don't want you to just believe me on the face of it because I'm an emotional guy. I'll prove it to you. With your own wisdom, your own common sense, and then there's lots of literature as well from PhD scientists. This wonderful book, and I know the title's backwards, but it's Nature's Phoenix. Nature's Phoenix by Dominic Delasawa, PhD, Chad Hansen, PhD. Another book called Smokescreen, Debunking Wildfire Myths to Save Our Forests and Our Climate by Chad Hansen. We can put these resources on the In Defense of Animals website in the future if we wish, but these are books with lots of studies debunking lots of the nonsense coming out of the agencies, including, God bless, the U.S. Forest Service, and this amazing book, Strangely Like War. Strangely Like War, which the subtitle is The Global Assault on Forests. And this thing is 20 years old, pertinent today. Just to get the notion across that we should be doing the opposite of taking our forests down. We're in the mess we're in because we've taken forests down. And the tragedy is to fix the problems created by killing too many trees. What's the proposed solution today? Killing millions, and I mean literally, not exaggeration, not hyperbole, literally millions more trees. It is the definition of suicidal.
I am so grateful that you're, highlighting that, Jack, and I thank you and Rick so much for explaining so much of this. I think it's been very interesting to a lot of people. We're actually seeing a lot of questions in the chat. You're already going over a lot of them, but I would just before we do that, I'd really be grateful. We've mentioned some of the fires. I think Rick, you mentioned some of the fires in Berkeley. In Defense of Animals has been involved in that. Jack, you mentioned the campfire. In Defense of Animals responded to that. We've been responding to the LA wildfires. We are there to pick up the pieces after this happens, but the best thing that we can do is prevent these fires from happening in the first place. And, animals suffer horrendously from fires, but they also are suffering horrendously when these, from these treatments of the forest. So Jack, could you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with this topic and what is going on in Tomales Bay, what's going on in Marin, what's inspired you to kind of get involved with this particular subject?
Thanks for asking. I find myself strangely, oddly emotional. I was working well with you guys. I mean, that's how we met. That's how I came to work as a consultant for In Defense of Animals. I was an activist that became aware of what was going on at Point Reyes with elk and with private cows, that private cows were responsible for fencing in the wild animals in a national park in the Bay Area, Point Reyes National Seashore. So we met, as you know, Fleur, on a water drop, bringing water to elk, which was a very clever activist idea to bring attention to the issue. When I was meeting with media to talk to media about the issue, I would want to go somewhere quiet before an event. They want to do a pre-interview with the people leading a demonstration as we were doing. And I took them to this wonderful forest, which was it's on the Point Reyes Peninsula, contiguous with the national park. And of course, all these boundaries are just human-made little lines on a map. It's all imaginary. Tomales Bay State Park, and it has 1,000-acre forest, or about 2,000-acre forest, excuse me. And I was going there and I would be with my gal at the time and her dog sometimes, and we just walked through this beautiful, quiet, lush forest. Coastal Marin now. A lot of this is West Marin, which is getting a ton of fog off the ocean. So the soil is spongy and the place is dense. It is wild. It is what these foresters or deforesters would call overgrown. And then I heard they had a project to do this stuff, to manage it, to treat it, to reduce the fuel load. And the other thing, it's another separate webinar Rick and I could do, which we've got a few people, we're talking about it this morning in preparation for this whole notion of wild is dangerous. And as a man, masculine energy Jack is forceful, he's masculine, but I can cry like anybody, I can weep like a person who loves the forest and the trees and the animals who live there. I would go to this place for solace, to renew to connect with the teeming wildlife I felt around me. And now there's these people walking there saying, no, no, this is dangerous. The place where you feel most alive, Jack, is dangerous and wrong. It needs to be managed, tamed, or as I say, man-aged. And that is a mentality, folks, which if I can impart that to you, we're halfway home. That you go, yeah, that's right. We have destroyed the planet. That's what man, my gender, mankind has done. And we're still doing it. Go ahead, Rick. You want to take issue and defend manhood?
I just want to tag into your management issue. When these projects go forward, and we're talking forest, chaparral, whatever, the ultimate result is the increase of highly flammable, non-native grasses and weeds. And what that means is, and I talked about what fires were like, they burn trees, shrubs, or grasses. The most dangerous fire and the one that has the most common denominators in terms of firefighter fatalities are grass fires. They move so fast, so suddenly, yet we don't think it is, but it is. And so what's happening is when they disturb the soil, they get those giant machines in these environments, they increase the flammability of the landscape. And that's one of the things our organization has been doing. We've got the state fire agency in court right now because they're allocating the destruction of hundreds of thousands of acres over the course of 10 years, actually almost 1 million acres, grinding it down and making the landscape more flammable. And so you have to think about that. It's counterintuitive. Wait, I mean, if we get rid of all the vegetation, which is literally, an extreme, right? Won't that be safer? No, because then you'll have grasses which ignite readily, spread the fire faster. So instead of doing what they say they're doing by reducing fire risk, they're actually increasing it. So landscapes like chaparral, which have more fire now than they can tolerate, forests, which actually large, very high intensity fires from time to time are natural. We don't like that because it's scary. It has big flames, and that's what we want to attack instead of the actual issue, which is making our communities fire safe.
Thank you, Rick. There are two large fires, actually, one of which is very recent, 2020, in Point Reyes National Seashore, actually, the Woodward Valley Fire. And they stopped it from burning buildings, but otherwise they didn't actually extinguish it, to their credit. This is National Park Service, I guess, and county firefighters came in there. It was 5,000 acres. Parts of it was a high-intensity fire. And even the terms high intensity, medium intensity, low intensity are confusing because fires don't burn evenly across a landscape. Depends on the vegetation, the hillsides, the wind, blah, blah, blah. But it actually, this big fire, we can walk through that now 5 years later, and it is gorgeous. It's a regenerating forest with lots of blackened trees. And by the way, when a forest burns, most of the carbon does not go up in smoke like you're told by the media. It actually is in those burned, charred sticks. The remaining tree, the mass of the carbon is still there. You actually release more carbon when you vegetation manage, which I'll call it, to demonize that word. So think about that. It's the opposite again. And again, it's forests know what they're doing. They're involved over millions of years, integral to the animals. All the animals have a place. There's no waste. There's nothing wrong. Nothing needs to be fixed. What we call in the business, as I've learned from Rick, the fire return interval. I've walked with a kid, he's not a scientist, he's like this young man in the video we just saw, through this forest behind me, Tomales Bay State Park, where IDA is on the ground involved. I've been in there with Fleur doing videos. He's looking around saying, well, this place should burn every 40 years. That's the fire return cycle. I'm like, out of which sphincter are you pulling this information? It's so absurd. The mind of humans, and the guy's a good guy. It's so tragic. I like this kid. 30 years old with more degrees than me, I suppose, masters in something, I guess. But he's like, no, Jack, it's really, we rearrange the fuels. Like, you cut down thousands of bushes over 1,000 acres, and that's rearranging fuels. Do you hear yourself? And as Rick and I know, he doesn't hear himself because he's schooled to think this way. It is a cultural, academic conditioning, industrial conditioning that gets people to think this way and not see the forest or the trees. It now becomes fuels, and that's all. We have any questions, Mary, by the way, that you would want to?
We actually do. Mary has some connection issues, so she's very kindly shared some of the questions for me. So thank you, everyone, for asking your questions.
I'm sorry, I'm going to be a rude man, and interrupt you one last time. I did want to say something. So Tomales Bay Forest is 1,000 acres, and I was upset about that. In Defense of Animals, God bless you folks. who I work with a lot and love, got involved in this issue. Well, lo and behold, now 2 years later, there's now a new project for coastal marin. It's not 1,000 acres. It's not 2,000 acres. It's not 10,000 acres. It's not 20,000 acres of vegetation management. It's 39,300 acres of vegetation management to be done along the coast, which is wet and completely different from inland forests with different weather, different climate, more fog. So that is gigantic compared to Tomales Bay. And then I know a friend, Josh Hart, up in Plumas County, California. Maybe there's some folks here from north of Tahoe, and there's a project there to thin over 200,000 acres of U.S. Forest Service national forest. Vegetation management, folks. So that's why we can fight this locally in your backyard, which I'm doing, but this is a huge issue of managing that, managing, there I go. I just repeated the propaganda. Cutting into that much forest, deforesting hundreds of thousands of acres, and it will be in the millions of acres. I've spoken to foresters who said, well, we really need to treat, another euphemism, millions of acres of California. And I'm looking at an insane person and it just breaks my heart because he's not a bad guy. He believes it. That's the scariest part, I suppose. So I just wanted to get that in. There's a lot more to say, but thank you, Flora. And please go to the questions. I want to deal with what people are saying directly. I wish we were in a town hall with live people because I'm old enough to remember those.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got a lot of people who are, I think most people here are very horrified by what they've seen today, as we all are, horrified for the animals, horrified for the forests. A lot of people commending your plant empath nature. And also, there's some questions here about the actual firefighting itself. So I guess this one might be good for Rick. Would residents using water reduce pressure for firefighters? Also, homes in fire-prone areas need to be built with fire-resistant materials.
Yeah, that's one of the main issues you get hit with on this exterior sprinkler thing. Okay, yeah, that's true. That's why you have your own independent water system. These systems have to be self-regulated, self-independent. A lot of people have pools. There's your water source. If not, get a tank. The whole thing can cost about $10,000. That's expensive, but it's a lot less than a home or somebody's life, right? So you can get automated systems. You can do things on your own. Just don't depend on the system that you depend on. See, we used to do these things as a community. Now we depend completely on government. What has to happen is we have to take back responsibility and take care of our homes ourselves.
I love
Right.
the idea. You mentioned a community there where like, wow, all those people in that you call it, I think it was a picture of a trailer park. If those people all pooled a few $100s together, hundreds of houses, they could do something that would be a lot. I mean, I know it's not perfect on
Well, Jack, if the governor gave the $1 billion out for those things, we'd have a problem solved pretty quickly.
Beautiful point. So actually, thank you for that clarification. Hence the value of talking back and forth. Like, yeah, that's right. We are spending the money. We're just spending it on the wrong thing. The money's available. It's not like we have to come up with more money.
Well, you mentioned that. That's another question that we've had in is how can this science and reality-based facts about wildfires not get the attention of our governor?
Well, unfortunately, in California, Cal Fire is the big gorilla in the room, and they pretty much run the show. So that's the answer.
So there's Rick the realist and Gescheit the dreamer. So how we do it, you ignite the grassroots of the people, which God bless, I keep saying this, In Defense of Animals does by getting 1,000 people to see this, by sharing it with 100 that are here. And then we become citizen activists who press on the government. With that bumper sticker when I first moved to California, I loved it. When the people lead, the leaders will follow.
And Jack, raise some money to sue the bastards. I mean, that's really the bottom line, all right? Because
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
they don't listen unless they're told to listen. And that's what we have with the current administration in Sacramento. You've got a liberal organization and majority that is actually manipulating the system to destroy the natural environment in a weird, twisted way. It's just bizarre to me.
As an activist, I've worked with Flora for years now with a couple different issues, Point Reyes Seashore and this deforestation issue, or vegetation management is deforestation issue. And it's always, correct me if I'm wrong, Flora, the public, education, media, and those play back and forth and feed each other. And then inevitably, I don't know if there's a lot of exceptions where a lawsuit was necessary. And you don't have, each person here, don't feel overwhelmed. You do the one thing that speaks to your heart that you do. Someone I see in the chat here, I'm not keeping up with it all because I'm trying to stay focused, said, hey, Jack, can you speak at the Marin Library? Whoever that person is, I'd love to. So you can get me at either through my Tree Spirit Project website or jackg@idausa.org.
I got you
Anybody
covered, Jack.
here, they all have my email. Yeah, thank you. You put it in the chat.
So Jack, if I can jump in. So your advocacy for individual action is absolutely phenomenal. And what I want to, having done this for 20 years and having burned out several times along the way, what's really important is you can't afford to be burned out. So what you've got to do is take bite-sized things you can control and things you can find validation with, that you find success in, and realize you can't do anything about the big picture, all right? But then you focus in on the local community, what you can do, and then you also are establishing legal standing for these letters and comments you write in, so you can do the ultimate thing, which is taking them to court. And so all these things line up together. I'm saying this because it's a big machine out there, and people get burned out and discouraged really easily. You can't let the bastards do that to you. You've got to find the goal you can achieve and go with that. Don't think you're going to change the world. Change your little space. Find validation and glory in that. The beautiful letter you write, that's as far as it goes. Is it going to change the governor? Don't know. Maybe it will, but enjoy that letter. Enjoy the process and enjoy the community you're building.
Thank you. I was just going to emphasize community. When I first met Rick, these years ago, he was a broken man on the side of the road. Just after 25 years of banging ahead, then he got some of my passion because I wasn't burnt out. I hadn't been doing it for 25 years, and I reignited, I like to think, a little of his fire, which he still had. But it's like, oh, what's the point? Well, he, the older activist, did I say older? I meant experienced activist, is awoken by more people on this chat jumping in with enthusiasm. And then you build us up and we build you up and we create community. And let me tell you, the alternative to that is to do nothing. And I promise you, that way lies madness and heartbreak. Because people in California will watch your forests and the destroyed and the animals driven off. And that is way more painful than the frustrations of being someone who's willing to be a civilian who speaks out about these things. You will find your fellow people so you're not insane and depressed and broken and alone and dispirited. It's the opposite of that as an activist. It's not an easy life, and you don't have to become a full-time activist. Not everybody can, but if you're retired, you can do something and participate in the community, know you're doing the right thing, protect your house from a wildfire effectively, and make friends in your community. And then, of course, I say the thrill, which Rick knows recently. He had a long 20-year ongoing lawsuit. That's why he speaks from experience with CAL FIRE, this agency that's supposed to protect us and could be doing a better job and spending the money more wisely. That's a gentle way of saying it. He won a lawsuit. I saw a smile on this guy over here. I told him, like drinking champagne on a Zoom call. When do you ever see an activist doing that? He won this big case. The battle will never end. We have to advocate for what we want. But I'm encouraging people to become involved because it's fulfilling to you personally, not just because it's the right thing to do. Or protect your house and protect those animals we all love. And I say this as a vegan activist too. You're really in a minority as a vegan activist, which is, I don't want to eat or abuse any animals, not even cows, pigs, and chickens. Well, that's not the dominant culture. It's a tough, lonely road, but the same thing, you find community, as I have found here with In Defense of Animals, people who get that too.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Jack. And yeah, I think you have a lot of very like-minded people in the chat here today, and a lot of people who are very, very pissed and they want to take action too. So I really appreciate Jack and Rick, you talking about your approaches and also the struggles that you faced during this. Quite aptly, burnout. It's real. We can feel it can be very challenging to be the person, the one small person. It feels like one small person standing up to these massive institutions, CAL FIRE, CAL Parks, the governor, the machinery of state. But we do have two very easy ways. We've made it easy for you to be able to take action right now. So you can go to idausa.org/Marin. You can go to idausa.org/Tomales Bay. those are 2 actions you can take right now. Just sign your name, and those will automatically fire off emails into the inboxes of decision makers. There's a list of other things that you can do to take action. You can donate to fund the fight to stop this and to change the dynamic away from the propaganda that we're having now, and to let the truth out. As Jack said, we are also, if you are feeling disempowered or down, or you would just like some support with your own advocacy and thinking about what you can do, we do need all of your talents and skills, whatever skills you have or feel that you can do for the cause. We offer an activist helpline. So you can go to idausa.org/activist support, and we will be there for you to listen to you. And it's like-minded people, and that's a unique thing that we offer directly to you. So that we also have some requests to share the rich resources that you have you've talked about in this call. We absolutely will be doing that, and we'll be sharing the replay link as well with you. So I just want to say thank you very much if you've been joining live. Thank you for your questions. I'm sorry we won't be able to get to all of them. Hopefully we'll be able to address some of them in the follow-up email. And I want to give a chance to Jack, if you have any last words.
I do. Thank you, Fleur. Just, folks, what Fleur said, but just to emphasize that, which, as we're learning with information, you need to repeat it. This video recording has a lot of information in it, which we're going to eventually get more of it on the website. But share this thing, watch it again. There's a ton of information being thrown at you, and a lot of it's overwhelming, and there's more to say. But share this link which will be available through email to people who registered, and I think also on the IDA website, correct?
Yes.
And when I say IDA, I'm saying In Defense of Animals.
And if I can add something, the first and most important thing all of you need to do is to make sure to go out and enjoy the animals and get out in nature and be, as Ed Abbey has said so clearly, be a half-hearted activist. Make sure you take care of the other half, and that's you.
Well said, Rick. Thank you so much.
We will protect what we love. Go out and be in the love.
Good point.
Hear, hear. And on that, we'll say thank you so much, everyone. It's been wonderful, very informative. We really appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Fleur. Thank you, Bob. Thank you all IDA supporters.